The last true wilderness in Britain, alternately dried by sun and wind and flooded by the sea, is the coast. The cliffs that set their face against the ocean seem unyielding, and yet the constant attack by the sea produces an ever-changing landscape, colourful contours and strange shapes. All around the British Isles, from Scotland to Cornwall, the coast is battered by some of the wildest seas on earth. Between the tides, it's a restless world. To survive here, the animals and plants have to be tough and adaptable. Even on the calmest day, strong natural forces are at work, polishing the rocks, shifting sand, building and destroying beaches. As the sea ebbs and flows, conditions change literally from hour to hour. The most extreme changes are found in estuaries, where fresh water from rivers mingles with the salty sea. This is the ex-estuary on the gentle side of Devon, much calmer than the exposed coast. It can be pretty busy here in summer, too busy perhaps. A holiday honeypot which attracts visitors of every size and shape, all of them competing for the best spot on the beach. But what's it like when the season's over? Then there's a different crowd on the estuary. Some are regulars, residents who live here all year round. But in winter they're joined by huge numbers of migrant birds. Like these Brent geese, refugees fleeing from Arctic Siberia where they breed some 3,000 miles away. Every year, flocks of wildfowl and waders come south to winter at the estuaries all around the British Isles. They pack together tightly at the tide's edge, roosting wherever they're safe from any disturbance. There's safety in numbers, and so the birds flock together as protection against the many predators on the estuary. While the tide is in, the birds must wait, as their food is covered by water. In the natural world of the estuary, all life responds to the pulse of the tides. Twice every 24 hours, the tide creeps in, adding more food particles to those brought down by the river. Now, protected from prying eyes, the animals that live beneath the silt can emerge and feed. The invertebrates feed on a nutritious soup made up of dead animal and plant material and living microorganisms. Some live on the surface of the sand grains, whilst others, like these diatoms, can move around. Surprising, since they're actually plants. The invertebrates have varied and ingenious methods for collecting their food. This tiny snail, about the size of a grain of wheat, is one of the commonest creatures. There may be 60,000 per square metre. It grazes on particles which coat the eelgrass, a flowering plant uniquely adapted to the fluctuating conditions in the estuary. Others act rather like vacuum cleaners. The body of this bivalve remains safely under the sand as it extends its siphon and sweeps the estuary bed, sucking in titbits. Shrimp-like animals emerge from their burrows and use their large antennae to grab their food. The paddles which propel the ragworm into its burrow are also used to draw in a current of water and food. Stretching into the distance behind me is sand and mud, a very mobile habitat. And yet out here on the estuary bed, there's a solid island, made not of rock, but of living organisms, mussels. The first mussels to arrive probably found a cluster of pebbles to attach themselves to, and they did that by sending out strands of sticky fluid which hardened in the water. So over the years, this island has gradually built up, as new arrivals have come along, clung on to the older mussels, and in turn provided a firm foothold for plenty of other creatures, such as these barnacles, periwinkles grazing on the diatoms on the mussel shells, and sand mason worms. So where there was once just muddy sand, now there's a thriving community of animals. This living island traps and filters much of the passing food, with each mussel processing a pint of water every 12 to 15 minutes. When the tide covers the mussel, it opens and two siphons protrude. The larger sucks in the water and suspended particles, and the internal gills then strain off the food, which is wafted by hairs to the mouth. All the mollusks and worms are food for the birds. As the tide falls back, mealtime begins. The smaller birds, like this dunlin, are the first to feed. It searches for snails by touch, probing just under the mud. To survive the long winter, dunlin need extra fat reserves, so they must use every available minute to search for food. In contrast, the grey plover feeds by sight. As the tide recedes further, the Brent geese arrive in family parties. Now they can feed in the shallow water on their favourite food, eelgrass. Feeding alongside the Brent are some of our most graceful ducks, the pintail. The competition for food is fierce, and it's deadly serious, as each day is a struggle to stay alive. To ease this competition, the birds' bills are specially adapted, so that each is expert at catching different types of prey. The greenshank favours worms, shrimps, and small fish. The godwit, however, uses its slender bill to probe for lugworms. Depressions and mounds are formed by lugworms as they surface to ingest sand and water or push out waste, an irresistible signal for a curlew. Not all wading birds have long beaks. The inquisitive turnstone's short, tough bill is ideal for prying amongst seaweed and flipping over stones to expose sandhoppers and insects. Of all the birds at the estuary, perhaps the noisiest and the most conspicuous are the oyster catchers. They're the last birds to leave their roost, as their favourite feeding grounds, the mussel beds, are only exposed at low tide. As the first mussels are uncovered, squabbling over food begins. Not Not all oyster catchers feed in the same way. Some are stabbers, jabbing at any mussels unfortunate enough to be still gaping. Other oyster catchers batter the shell until it breaks. Their bills are the perfect tools for the job. Hammer, chisel and burglar's jemmy all in one. But it can still take them up to 5 minutes to break in. Their appetites are enormous. In one day, a single bird can eat 100 mussels or up to 500 cockles. Oyster catchers have a well-defined pecking order. It's the oldest and most experienced birds which claim the biggest and best mussels. Other people's food always looks better than one's own, and stealing and fighting are common. Displays like this are an attempt to establish who's boss. All over the estuary, birds must ensure they get enough food in the short time available. The redshank aggressively guards a territory, defending its food supply against intruders. The time spent fighting wastes precious minutes feeding. Some birds don't manage to satisfy their appetites, and a cold winter leaves many casualties, making easy pickings for the scavengers inspecting the tide line. Mussel beds aren't exposed for long, and the oyster catchers are soon pushed off by the rising water. Once the tide has turned, it comes in fast, driving the birds before it. For some, the tide comes in too fast, and they don't have enough time to feed. The wet grass meadows that flank the estuary hold important additional food reserves for waders and ducks such as widgeon. Following the tide is a pattern which will be repeated day after day until spring comes, and many of the winter visitors leave the estuary to begin the long journey to their breeding grounds further north. When the summer yachtsmen return, most of the oyster catchers have gone, but plenty of other animals stay behind. The fox is still here, and now there are a whole host of other scavengers making the most of the strand line. Everything here has come to the end of its natural lifespan, and it's been dumped by high tides, so this dead and rotting collection is an ideal place for scavengers to find food. This small beetle feeds on carrion and other bits of organic material at the high tide line. The adults are flightless and their front legs are flattened to help them dig under debris or deep into the sand. All the various scavengers, whether they're on the large side like the fox or tiny like the creepy crawlies scuttling amongst all this, are acting as dustbin men. They digest the dead bits and pieces and so break them down until eventually most of the material ends up as part of detritus, the basis of the estuary's food. Small invertebrates eat the broken down material and they in turn are eaten by larger creatures, which end up as food for the animals at the top of the food web. A common sight on the estuary is the heron, and at the moment there are hungry mouths to feed. Feeding a family is hard work for the heron. Every day it must fly between the estuary and its nest in the wood. Heron chicks hatch at roughly 2-day intervals, giving the eldest a head start, so it has a better chance of winning the battle for the semi-digested food. So demanding are the young that when the parent has regurgitated one meal, it's back to the estuary to find more fish. A creature that's totally at home in the estuary is the flounder. It wasn't born with that flat body and curious lopsided expression. When an infant flounder begins life in the sea, it's roughly the same shape as other fish. But soon a strange transformation takes place. The left eye begins to wander to the other side of the flounder's face, and the young fish swims left side downwards. When it's finally able to change its colour to match its surroundings, then it's ready for its life on the bed of the estuary. The flounder has evolved its mottled colouring as camouflage to avoid predators. Once buried in the sand, it's invisible. But the heron is a patient fisherman, prepared to wait until puffs of sand act as smoke signals and betray the hidden fish. The sand which helps to hide the flounders also houses a rather special resident, and one which incidentally no animal seems to prey on. This is Ophelia, the blushing worm, and you won't find it anywhere else in Britain except here at the Ex-estuary. So strange looking is it that when it was first discovered, it was described upside down and back to front. This in fact is its head end, and you can see it's blushing now. Ophelia's blushing is actually caused by its method of burrowing. Blood and body fluid are pushed under pressure into the worm's front end. They're prevented from going backwards into the rest of the body by a cone-shaped organ, so the only way they can flow is forwards, forcing out a hole in the sand. Ophelia is only found in this narrow stretch of well-drained sand. There's not much oxygenated water there, so perhaps this blushing, which brings the blood to the surface, is also another way of breathing. The estuary is very important for the young herons, who, already tackling whole fish, will soon have to leave the nest and fend for themselves. Eels form a large part of the heron's diet. They're migratory fish, moving during their lifetime between salt and fresh water. The young eels or elvers arrive in spring on their way upriver, having taken 2.5 years to travel from the Sargasso Sea off the coast of Florida. All these fish which migrate have one problem in common: coping with the drastic changes in salinity as they move from sea to fresh water. As the environment alters, the fish have to prevent themselves from gaining or losing too much water. There are various mechanisms to do this, ranging from having a protective slimy barrier to actually pumping out any excess water from their cells. Once fully grown, the eels return to the Sargasso to breed, providing they escape the perils of the estuary. The otter, like the heron, was considered to be vermin because of its taste for fish. In the late 50s, pesticides drastically cut down the numbers of otters. But now they face even more pressures: loss of cover and increased disturbance from anglers, boaters, and people simply out for a walk. Estuaries are popular places for both leisure and industry, and so are among our most threatened habitats. But with a little forethought, it is possible for these activities to coexist with nature, ensuring that hungry birds from abroad will still take the place of boats and holidaymakers when summer is over. And Britain's estuaries will remain some of the richest haunts for both wildlife and people for many generations to come.